So one of the biggest lies that hunters believe is that they need deep pockets to make their hunting and their hunting ground better. But that's the furthest thing from the truth. Today I'm going to talk about 5 different ways that you can build up the habitat on your hunting ground for little to no money. One of the first things you can do if you have a lot of open space on your ground or spots that you can fill in where you want cover is transplant trees. So these trees right here were trees, or they were spruce trees, that I found growing next to a large spruce stand. So what I did was get permission to go in and dig up all these volunteer spruce trees. Actually, what I did is I went in the spring when the ground was still good and wet, right after snow melt, and I just pulled them up, just like that, just like a weed. And if the root ball broke or didn't stay attached, I threw it to the side. But if that root stayed together, I threw it in a bucket of water. I came over here the same exact day, within an hour, and I started dibbling in these young spruce trees. Totally free. If you don't have a dibble bar, that would be a little bit of an investment on this strategy, but it's 55 bucks on Amazon. Dirt cheap, worth every penny. But of course, if you have a spade or spade shovel, you can do that too. The dibble bar is just much quicker. So I came in, planted them that same day, and you can see quite a few of them took off. Now you can also dig up that root ball if you want, and do it the right way so you can up your success rate a little bit. But for me, that day I was literally just pulling up left and right trees right by their roots, and there were so many of them growing that it was okay if the root ball broke off. It's okay to throw them to the side because they weren't going to end up amounting to anything anyway. But the ones that stayed pretty well attached, I put in a bucket of water and came out here and planted some spruce trees. And you can see that they're nice, healthy, vibrant trees. So very easy to do. You don't have to do my strategy of pulling them up like a weed. You can dig them up. But these were 100% free trees to me, and eventually they are going to add some cover and security out in this pasture. And it doesn't have to be conifers. You can look for American plum or thicket forming. There's tons of little root suckers next to American plum trees. So if you find a plum tree, go dig some of those up, transplant those. I've done it with like aspen or popple. Those plant really well. You go in the woods, you'll see, if you want to add some maple to your property, you'll normally see a carpet of maples and a woods that has maples in it because they're somewhat shade tolerant, so you can go pluck some of those up. But tree planting is a very easy thing, or tree transplanting is a very easy thing to do. You can do it in the fall or spring, and you can do it for free. If you already got a shovel, totally free. If you don't got a dibble bar, $55 investment, but for the most part, worth every single penny. All right, we'll stick with the tree theme because most of the time when we're talking about building up habitat, a big component of that is cover, and trees obviously can add cover to your property. So for this strategy, what you do is you plant tree cuttings. So right here in front of me, this is a hybrid poplar. It's about 7 feet tall. Now this was planted literally with a stick. So if you look down here, right there, you can see the original cutting, and what happened is it rooted, or it started to grow right off that cutting. It rooted underneath the ground, obviously, and I was able to get a tree that clearly the deer have found as well. This is probably 3 years old, 7 feet tall, and it was a completely free tree to me because what I did is I found some hybrid popples that have been harvested on a property that's actually neighbors ours. I asked the neighbor for permission to take cuttings when the regrowth came off those fresh cut popples. And I went in, I took a 5-gallon bucket. I filled it with 2-foot cuttings when the tree was dormant in the spring. I put a little bit of water in the bottom of the bucket just to keep the tree cuttings wet. But I filled it up and then literally drove right over here and started plugging the cuttings in the ground. So when you do that, what you want to do is you have a 2-foot cutting, you put it 1 foot deep. Obviously you keep the nodes facing up, And before I put that cutting in the ground, I actually scrape along one side of it because that helps to encourage rooting. And I would bet 80% of the trees took off. I mean, that is a way you can literally plant hundreds, if not thousands of trees in one day, because you're literally just sticking sticks in the ground. Sometimes I'll take a piece of rebar with me just to kind of start that hole, then I'll stick the stick in. But I mean, you can plant a tree in 5 seconds that way. And when I cut the cuttings too, I purposely cut the bottom at an angle so it stabs into the ground a little easier. But trees, there's certain trees that root really easily from cuttings. If you can get access to those trees, you can take as many cuttings as you want. I like 2-year-old growth when I'm planting cuttings, so I'll kind of look for that 2-year-old growth on the tree. Some trees I've planted via cuttings, hybrid poplar, like this one, take off really well. Red osier dogwood do really well from cuttings, and willow, any type of willow, hybrid willow or just regular willow, like peach leaf willow, black leaf willow, that type of thing. Those can take off really well from cuttings as well. So willow, hybrid poplar, red osier dogwood, and there are other species out there too that root well from cuttings, but those are the ones I've tried, and you can plant hundreds, if not thousands of trees completely free. You need a pair of snips, but I would hope most of you have a pair of snips handy that you can utilize. Well, if you followed my page for any amount of time, you knew this one was going to be on the list. Number 3, bust out the chainsaw. So look at all the deer sign in here, bunch of scat. So breaking out the chainsaw, which everybody should have in chainsaw. I'm just assuming you already have one. Clearly that would be a little bit of investment if you don't have one. But if you own hunting land, you should have a chainsaw. So I'm assuming that you got one on hand already. So bust out your chainsaw and you can create acres of phenomenal, great habitat. Now this particular area, there was multiple things done, all done with the chainsaw. There was some logging done, kind of up through here, which created some nice thick logging regen or woody regeneration. So that I didn't even have to do the chainsaw. And, the loggers did it for us and we were able to get paid for it. But then I broke out the chainsaw up in here. I got some scattered bedding, like a bedding cut that kind of weaves up and down through this ridge. I made a few hinge cuts. I did a lot of flush cuts. When I talk about hinge cut bedding areas, remember, even in my hinge cut bedding areas, I'm probably hinging 1 out of every 4 trees, maybe. Probably not even that many. I'm kind of strategically placing the hinges, but if you don't like hinge cutting, that's totally fine. You can do all flush cuts. You'll still get a benefit because check out all this regeneration. This was an open area that had no habitat value before. No value for the deer, no value for other wildlife. But it got completely transformed with a chainsaw. Now it holds deer. We actually bed deer on this ridge that we didn't bed deer in before. So if you're willing to get out with a chainsaw and put that sweat equity into your property, that's going to be more powerful than almost any other habitat work that you're going to do on your property. You can do bedding cuts, you can do edge feathering to add screening, you can do TSI. When I say TSI, that's timber stand improvement, where you release your beautiful mast producing trees like oaks. When I talk about that, I've said it a million times, but you basically just release the crown competition around your nice oak trees. We got 2 red oaks right there, and I've cut everything else around it. And honestly, I could probably cut one of the 2 reds in favor of the one that produces more acorns. But if you cut that crown competition around your oak trees, you're going to get 50% more acorns than you did before, because more crown equals more stems, which equals more acorns. So you can do TSI, you can do bedding cuts, you can do edge feathering, you can cut trails in to guide that deer movement, make travel corridors through your property, make that deer movement a little bit more predictable. There's tons of stuff you can do with a chainsaw. You just have to be willing to do it. Be willing to put that sweat equity into your property. When I started doing this habitat work, I gave myself a $500 budget, and I don't even think I spent that much on anything on the property. I mean, most of my cost was in like some chemical for killing buckthorn, but very little cost going into this. Most of it was me and a chainsaw and just getting at it and setting up these areas so that they actually can bed some deer. So that is definitely one. If you're willing to do the work, you can transform your property with a chainsaw. Here's one that takes no effort on your part. Just let an area go fallow. Let nature do its thing. So like this area, all these trees growing just came on their own. The successional process played out. And these box elders, and there's some ash. I did notice some shrubs that are mixed in here. They all came in on their own. See, we got a really nice deer trail right here, cutting up through here, because this is free food and free cover. And I didn't have to do anything. Now, we did plant the conifers. Those were added into this area. We got some young ones in here. This is where you could put your free transplanted conifers that you're going to go scout out and find. So you mix in some free conifers into an area that you're letting go fallow and grow back, and you can create some phenomenal deer habitat. Now, this doesn't always work. I would say the majority of the time when you let an area go fallow, this process will play out like this, but sometimes you have areas that 40, 50 years they've been fallow, and either the deer have kept them browsed down, or there just was not a lot of trees around to begin with, so there wasn't that tree seed in the seed bed that never got released. So you might have to do some work of your own to build it up, but this spot was just let go. Now, if we would have really wanted to expedite the process, this would cost a little bit, and this is assuming that you maybe had a sprayer. We would have come in here right away when we let this field go fallow, and we would have killed back all these cool season grasses. And by doing that, we would have released that seed bed much quicker, because cool season grass is absolute junk. It does nothing for wildlife. It sucks moisture from our trees. If we would have killed it back, we would have released the seed bed. Our trees would have jumped that much quicker, and we would be that much further along in this woody regrowth process. But we didn't know what we didn't know 20 years ago, so we didn't do that. And we kind of let it play out, and it took a while for the trees to get to this stage. I mean, 10 years ago, the first 10 years, I would say they stayed 2 to 3 feet tall because the deer kept them browse back. But finally, we hit a couple good growing years where they got past the deer browse line, and now we're getting some really good, viable cover through here. And look at these deer trails. Wow. I mean, nice, heavy trails running in and through this area. And really, all these deciduous trees that you see in here, well, none of them were planted. They're all just natural regeneration. So sometimes just letting an area go fallow works really well. And if you want to expedite the process, spraying clethodim, which is a grass specific herbicide mixed with crop oil, will kill off that cool season grass and just get this stuff coming that much quicker. And I just looked today, couldn't believe it. Clethodim is $100 for a 2.5 gallon jug. And that is going to get you many, many tanks, because the mix ratio is very low with clethodim. So it's $100 well spent, probably $50 for the crop oil that you're going to mix with it. But you could transform acres upon acres with that much herbicide. So something to consider if you do have a sprayer. But either way, sometimes just letting nature do its thing works very, very well. It's fun to see all the deer sign in here. And lastly, you can do some direct tree seeding. So with that, what you're doing is you're collecting your tree seeds when they're dropping in the fall, and you're seeding them in the fall. Now, this is nature that did this direct tree seeding for us. Got a big old bur oak right up there. Look at that beautiful tree. And all the way around it, we have all of these young bur oaks growing. And this area is just loaded with bur oaks. So these acorns would have dropped in the fall, and apparently a few got past the deer. So they would have sprouted the following spring. And we must not have had as many deer on the property when these started growing, because normally the deer select the acorns or the oaks first. And in a small area like this, I would have thought that these oak trees would have got nibbled off. But they got past the deer, and we got tons of young oaks coming. So clearly, once it hits this stage, you'd want to thin them down and start selecting your healthiest trees, cut all the competition around them, and let your healthy trees take off. But direct tree seeding is something that you can certainly do if you're willing to go out and collect the seeds of the tree that you want to promote and then go plant. Now, there's some assumption here that if you're a deer hunter, you have some type of tillage equipment. Because if I'm doing direct tree seeding, what I want to do is till the area that I'm going to be planting in. I would go and throw my acorns out if that's what I'm planting. And then I would come back over top of them with the cultipacker and pack them in. Because I'm wanting to get them packed in so they can get past the deer. That they won't have as easy of access to those acorns and eat them. Because if they're sitting right on top, there's a fairly good chance they're going to eat most of them. But if you don't have access to tillage equipment, you certainly can start throwing out seeds. If you're doing a seed that deer don't prefer to eat, well then obviously you might be able to get a few past the deer and get them to start growing. And if you do a large area, hopefully you can get them past the deer browse line and start to create some young forest. But yep, you want to emulate nature when you do this. So you collect your seeds in the fall and you plant that same fall. And let the snow fall on top of those seeds that you planted. And they should take off in the spring. There is a tool out there. If you're planting acorns, it's called the squirrel. It's kind of expensive. It's $180. But you can use that to plant thousands of oak trees if you want to use it. It's a tool that just very easily plants the acorns for you. Again, it's called the squirrel. But it is $180 for that. But if you think of the fact that you can plant tens of thousands of trees with it for $180, might be worth it if you don't have access to tillage equipment to do it the way that I just described. I remember watching Bill Winke back when he was with Midwest Whitetail. He did projects like this where they would just drive along into a tilled field and just sling out handfuls of acorns. You got to hand broadcast them, obviously. And it was an effective strategy for him, and certainly can be an effective strategy for you if you want to try plant lots of trees quickly. So yeah, very much a nice little tool at your disposal. Oh, there's a deer bed right there. Pretty cool. All right, here's a bonus one. Doing things like this from more of a hunting strategy standpoint, not necessarily habitat management, but putting out vines, putting out old fence posts, just these cheap, free attractants, and you can help guide and direct those bucks right into bow range of your stand. We got a bow stand right over there. Got a nice mock vine right here. Got the travel corridor kicking out right there. So the deer comes in right here and sets up the bow shot. You can see right through there, we got a lane. So that was free. I found the grapevine and cut it off. I guess I needed some paracord, which that amount of paracord probably cost me $1/4. And tied it off, made sure the bottom right there was at belly button height. And every fall, this whole area gets completely worked up. So it's just a nice incentive to try get a buck to stop in bow range, and also kind of maybe pull them in this area when they want to check that scrape. Also, if you can find old fence posts, putting those out as rubbing posts work very well as well. So lots of things you can do to just attract and pull the deer in, but this stuff is free. You just let nature do its thing right there by using what nature gave you with the grapevine. So yep, very easy to do. So again, don't fall for the lie that you need deep pockets to be able to make your hunting land better. You can absolutely build up the habitat on your property strictly by the sweat of your brow. If you're willing to get to work, you're willing to roll up your sleeves and get at it, there is tons of great habitat work you can do for little to no cost. Like when I started this, I had a very tight budget, like I mentioned, but most of the work I did was strictly me getting out there and being willing to put in the work that was necessary to build up our native habitat. So absolutely, you can do it. You just got to commit to it and then go get at it. All right, y'all take care. God bless.